works wherever in any environment, but also to be able to solve the problems that we need to address, okay? And so I'm going to have a quick look on the VCS system, then I'm going to look at the development tools, going to the Edge AI, and I'm going to end the presentation with some videos about some of the work that is being done, okay? So the VCS1 system, which you call vision controls and sensors, is the board, the stack of boards that we can see on the right-hand side. So these allow us, as you can see, to interface with a wide range of sensors and actuators. But at the same time, as the PCI 104 form factor, which is a form factor that was being designed for working in robotics. So we want to be able to occupy uh, the minimum space that we can and still be able to deliver all the functionality that we need to deliver. So the board is compatible with several Linux distributions. We have tested with Ubuntu, Debian. You can also run Red Hat and CentOS. In terms of software support, we offer to ROS and ROS2 and also MQTT because we want to make the system available for most of the robotics applications, okay? And you can program the board using Python and C++. Okay, so what are we doing different? Well, we are basically offering a state-of-the-art multiprocessor system on the chip from Xilinx, which is a mixture of architecture. So you have ARM A53 CPU, and on the ARM A53 CPU, we are running an operating system to deliver the service that we require to be able to run ROS, okay? And the good news is that at the same time, Xilinx has a platform called Xilinx VTs that allow us to run an accelerated state-of-the-art AI algorithms. And I'm going to show a couple of videos to show why is this important. Okay, so as I mentioned, we, as a company, we are interested in creating platforms that allow software developers to be able to use our platform without having to dip into the hardware. And therefore, we offer support in terms of MQTT, OpenCV is a must, okay, ROS and ROS2, and Xilinx makes available a platform called Pink, which is Python on Zinc, where people can take advantage of the FPGA using Python, which is a very big advance because 2 or 3 years ago, this was not possible. So you either would be able to use the FPGA using C++, or if you want to have a lot of control, you will have to go to VHDL. Okay, so now we know the platform, and there are some other platforms around in the market. And if anyone is interested, please contact us because we will be here to help, and we'll try to make the integration as smooth as possible. Okay. So let's look at the Xilinx Edge AI. So Xilinx is is the biggest company producing FPGAs and MPSOCs hardware, and they realized that the community these days need to run state-of-the-art AI algorithms. So what they done was they created a unified platform called VTs, where that has support, for example, for Caffe, TensorFlow, Darknet, and Keras. And what this allows is the people to take their own AI algorithms and to accelerate them on the FPGA, but accelerating with low power, okay? So for example, if you use a dedicated PC to accelerate, you'll be able probably to get the same performance, but you're probably going to spend around 200 or 300 watts, okay? We did some tests, and we have a publication around that that has been submitted, and we are able to accelerate neural networks and just have a power consumption around 15 watts, which is very interesting, because if you want your robot to run all day and you don't want to have the multiprocessor to consume most of the power, then you should be looking into that. Okay, I have a couple of videos. I'm not going to show all the videos. I'm going to show just some parts of the videos to highlight the kind of work that we have been doing. So this has been done as a final year project, and here we are using the same platform to do some navigation. Okay, and here you can see the robot on the right hand side, and this was at the beginning. And you can see here also that we have AI algorithm running. So
sorry, Pedro, could you please
mute.
screen? No.
Yes.
Have the full screen of your
Yes.
video.
Let me try to do that. I'll try. Okay. Unless I open on YouTube. Let me see if I open on YouTube, if you can see it. Okay. Okay, so here we can see initial applications. This is not very interesting, so we move on into the next one, because I just want to, we have this video, which is also very interesting, where we see algorithms be accelerating using the VT's tools. Here you can see how fast the neural network is classifying. And what is interesting here is that at some point, you can see the text stopping, and it's stopping because the time that takes to display the image is higher than the time that takes to classify the image. And I'm going to jump to a different part. Yeah. So here we have another video where we are able to run a CNN algorithm in real time. As you can see, the images are being processed and are being classified while the video is being processed. Next one, and I was here. This is one of our partners in Portugal, and they are looking into sorry. And they are also designing robots for forestry, which is another segment, and they have to face some of the same challenges that we have to face in agriculture. Here you can see that on the top of the robot you have it's a distributed system, so they also have an edge AI platform, one of our boards, and they have more distributed systems, which is very interesting. And the final version of this project, it will be composed by this main robot and plus a fleet of 5 drones, and all of that will be processing information on the fly. I'm now jumping into the next one. This was an ongoing project where we start to apply our system into VNR robots. Here, oh, no, not this one, it's the next one. So this is the same robot that I've shown before. This was the first trials where we basically play fetch with the robot. And basically what we did was to use the GPS coordinates and ask the robot to come back as soon as it reached that particular distance. So these were the initial another project, and I know that there are people today from Fraunhofer. This was a project where the drone is being controlled by our platform. And okay, and what they are doing is to use our platform to prevent the object, the drone, to collide with objects. You can see that the drone is processing information from that image, so which is it's a very heavy and time-consuming okay, let's go jump.
Sorry, is
Yes.
it monocular or binocular?
It's probably easy if you ask the guys that are from Fraunhofer. So I was not directly involved on this project, although I can answer regarding our projects, okay? And I will tell you what we are using.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is our, and let's go on YouTube. So this is autonomous vineyard robot. Where we also use the same platform to accelerate the algorithms. And the main goal of this robot is to go through the vineyard and collect the NDVI of the canopies while it's moving around. Okay, I'm not going to show all video. So as you can see, the robot is working in fully autonomous mode. Here you can see the beautiful vineyards of Portugal. I couldn't resist myself. And let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is more of our work. So, and here we are using the Intel D435 to capture the information. This was another BSc final year project that we had here at the Nottingham Trent University in partnership with Sundance. And here we can see the initially the algorithm was not very optimized, but we are already doing the classification, and there's an attempt to classify the NDVI. This was the preliminary stages. We have now advanced much more. You can see here that we are using the near-infrared feed from the D435 and the red channel of the RGB image to compute the NDVI. And moving quickly forward, here we have an example on what happens in terms of using the neural network, where we look into different stages and different trainings. So when you are preparing your algorithm, the question is always, when should we stop? We published a paper on the Iberian Robotics Conference last year, where we suggest that when you are training your neural network algorithm, the optimal number of iterations is around 2,000 training steps per class. Okay, here we see the difference between using different weights, and I'm going to quickly to jump into the next one. Okay, so in terms of conclusions, the Sundance VCS1 systems delivers the desirable heterogeneous computing facility for edge computing, so you can decide what to accelerate. Sundance can lend VCS1 systems to researchers interested in deploying AI solutions. Yes, we have a Sundance University program. If you want to put your hands on one of these platforms and you don't want to commit to buy it at the beginning, we can lend you the platform and you can test it. And Sundance is a Xilinx Alliance member, and VCS1 is highlighted on the Xilinx AI blog. You can see that we talk about our platform on Xilinx, and I'm really happy to take your questions if you have them. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. That is really interesting presentation. Are there any questions for Pedro?
Apparently not.
So I have one. This is Gijs from TU Delft.
Hi.
interesting. I was wondering if you could say
I have a
something
small
about
question.
Sorry?
I think there was an overlap. Can you, Elias, can you continue probably?
Yes. Okay. I was wondering if you could say something about the typical sort of speed up that you see accelerating these
Well,
AI or these neural networks classification tasks compared to regular CPUs and maybe even GPUs, because they seem like an obvious sort of comparison.
I was able to test up to 30 frames per second. Okay. Xilinx says that you are able to accelerate up to 100 frames per second. I didn't test that because I don't have cameras producing me information at 100 frames per second, but you can accelerate at 30 frames per second.
So
there is always a commitment. Be careful, okay?
Sorry.
If you there's always a commitment, okay? Because there is a data flowing from the processor to the FPGA, and then data coming back from the FPGA to the processor. So if you have a lot of stuff happening in the processor, you may be having a latency, not because of the acceleration of the algorithm, but because your processor is taking time to be available to process the information that is already ready to use.
Okay. Now, the obvious question is GPUs can also do this faster than real-time classification, but I would say they typically tend to use a lot more power, right?
Yes.
So do you have any numbers on how those two compare? I mean, obviously, a typical GPU that you would use for these kind of things would run into the, I don't know, 150, 200 watts or something.
I don't have those numbers with me because it's not my focus. I can send you that information offline because I know that Xilinx has some information and there has been some publication. Also, one thing that I would like to highlight is that an FPGA allows you to describe what we call neuromorphic hardware. So it's hardware that adapts to the problem that you are trying to solve, okay? While a GPU is a well-known architecture. Even if they do the work now, at some point in the near future, it will not be enough because you will always be stuck with an architecture while the architecture that you run on the FPGA may evolve.
Assuming that GPU manufacturers don't go into the same direction, obviously. But
well,
yes, you're right. That it makes sense. It makes sense. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So is there
I have another small question.
Sure.
So do you have the power consumption during the workflow? Is it still limited at 15 watts?
Well, it depends on what's happening on the processor as well. Okay, so this was what we were able to measure using one of our board, the Linsin board, that allows you to measure all the power rails that are being used. Of course, if you are doing much more stuff on the processor side, that will increase the power consumption of the processor, but it's still very low when compared with different architectures because most of your power consumption goes to the dedicated hardware. So for example, on the GPU, the reason why it increases so much is because you are activating all the CUDA cores to accelerate the neural network. But if you are interested in this field, we are very happy to send you one of our kits and allow you to walk and to do any tests that you may want to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Pedro, can I ask, so how do you integrate this with ROS nodes?
Well, because you have the processor A53 and runs a distribution of Ubuntu, then it's very simple. So the concept, the way we do is we use the ROS communications paradigm. So using topics. Okay, so what we do is we have our model, the artificial intelligent model that is subscribing a topic, and as soon as the results are available, the results are published into a topic. So it's very simple and straightforward for you to integrate with ROS, because you can even do a test. So for example, if you have the same model running in software, you can activate the model that runs on the processor, and then you can check how much time does it take to use to accelerate to do the classification using OpenCV, and then you just swap and you use the card that the AI card that accelerates on FPGA. And the way we develop the system is we use the ROS communication paradigm, so that the software developer doesn't have to go into too much details on how to train everything. One of the biggest issues, and we have been working on that, is it was not very clear at the beginning and how to train the neural network, how to use the neural network weights in the to be accelerated on the FPGA side. And we have been working on a tool chain that basically takes the weights that you have, for example, for TensorFlow on the CNN, and it converts that into the language that the VTs understand.
Thanks. Would you happen to have any standard ROS nodes or templates that you provide your customers, or are they supposed to use your SDK? Because I get the impression it's similar to an SDK and then write something themselves.
All our source code is available on our Git repository. Okay, we have on the public Git repository, we have instructions on how to deploy the system. We have several tutorials, and we have some very simple examples in our private repository. And the reason why part of this is still being kept private is because we are still working on this tool chain, and the goal is to release this as a open source, so that the customer doesn't have to focus on how it works, but more on how to use it to solve a particular problem. Just because you may want just to use our platform to accelerate to do some type of classification, and you may not even know how to do this. So what we are doing, and we are creating a community around that, is to develop a framework that is supported not just by Sundance but also by the community, and where we make this easy. One information that I need to provide is that the Xilinx VTs was launched in, I think it was November last year. So all of this is ongoing work. So we will be very interested in some of you are interested to have access to the platform and are interested in contribute also to help to improve this tool chain. We'll be more than happy to engage with you.
Okay, thank you. Can you share your Git repository on Slack later?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So because we are running out of time, so let's move on to the next item of the agenda. Wait, I will share my screen. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the next item will be another discussion on a topic. So based on the most voted topic, it's the shared data set with commonly agreed annotation standards. So is there anyone wants to discuss on this topic? We'll share some opinions on this topic, because I think there were 3 votes on this topic. I asked this on Doodle, but most of the people didn't answer. So,
well, my view on this is that the idea is great. It's not very easy to do this because you have different platforms. So you have TensorFlow, you have also cafe, you have darknet, and each one of them tend to be a bit different the way that you do the annotations. Okay, but if we decide, for example, and this is the work that that I've been exploiting with my students at the Nottingham Trent University, is instead of you provide the annotations in such a way that is ready for YOLO or a different YOLO, for example, in Darknet or YOLO in Cafe, if you provide the coordinates of the shapes of the annotation in a structured way, for example, use HD5 or JSON, you may be able to convert easily any of these annotations to any of the frameworks. That's my view. Anyone?
So your suggestion is essentially to use a out-of-band format to encode the annotations, and then when someone wants to use them for their particular framework,
yes,
provide some kind of transformation between the out-of-band framework to the particular implementation,
yes,
defined weight structure.
I think one of the things that we should consider is we are now moving more and more to the pixel level annotations. So we should provide a standard way, and for example, decide that the annotation can be done using a polynomial up to, let's say, 8 degrees. So you have, and then we just do the annotations around that. Of course, when you do the conversion, you may not be able to, depending on the system that you are using to train, you may have to convert that, for example, into a box, right? But if it's already annotated at the pixel level, then I think you'll be able to reuse the same annotation to fulfill completely different requirements.
So, to me, this sounds like something that may already exist in other, or it would at least make sense to see whether something like this already exists in other fields, right? Would anyone have any idea of, or would anyone have seen something like this in other, I would say, domains?
Well, it's probably just you and me talking. Well, I know the COCO dataset and the way that it has been annotated. The ImageNet is also annotated more or less the same way. Most of the annotations have been done with bonding boxes, but for example, you have Bonnet et al., which allows you to look at the pixel level annotation. So therefore, all the annotations that you have in that format will not be compatible with the Bonnet et al.
Well, I think I would definitely be in favor of trying to see, use something that already exists, because otherwise we just isolate ourselves here.
Well, the data sets for agriculture are very poor, and I'm not sure how many companies are doing that. I know that we are doing that. We are collecting data from fields, and we are using the same way of doing the annotations. One of the problems is that some of those data sets cannot be released freely because they were being collected by a company, and the company says that they are the proprietors, that the data sets are their property.
So that sounds like a task for a working group to
yes, absolutely.
find and curate a list of actually publicly available data sets.
Yeah.
And then obviously I would say a related topic would be to provide, I would say, sort of sufficient and appropriate annotations in the right formats. Would that be something that could be a sort of a first working group in ROS Agriculture Europe?
I vote yes.
I also, Kevin here from IPA, from Fraunhofer, I also really like this idea, and I think we all share those common problems, right? When it comes to data sets, as you said, in agriculture, there is barely any open access data set available right now. we are also working, or we plan to work on certain kind of data sets in certain crops. So a working group there to establish some standards seem really, really fitting right now at that point. So I would definitely agree for that. I would even agree on creating maybe some working groups for all those different topics, because overall I think we will have the same problems when it comes to data sets, when it comes to this, to the next point, to the multi-vehicle navigation, one strong focus from our side as well. When it comes to certain other topics in image processing in the field outside. So maybe we can create a few clusters and create, as you suggested, some working groups for that to establish maybe, I don't know, some frameworks or at least some common understanding who's working on what, and maybe then we can create some kind of map as well, who's working on what, for example, for also other project proposals or so on, to find easy partnerships for these kind of topics.
I fully agree with what you just said, and I'm voting yes.
So I'm assuming that we all agree that this might be a good idea, but obviously the success of this idea depends on people actually doing things. So my proposal would be to see whether we can start small, and since this seems to have hit home for at least a number of participants here, would it be an idea if Pedro and Kevin see what the current state is of publicly available data sets? And this could be very small, just a list of what's there, what the formats are they are provided in, whether they're annotated or not, in what form they are annotated. Maybe Pedro, you already know some of this. That's fine, obviously. That just means that we have more to share, and then we can see whether next time when we meet, there is something to share and discuss. And from there, we can probably start sort of setting up proper working groups, if possible, because obviously it depends on people that are interested in this. And then we can start looking into whether, what sort of standards we would be interested in.
I have another name to suggest that has been very quiet. Philip, if you can hear me, can you step in? I think you are also the correct person to join this initial group.
Yeah, hi Pedro, I'm here. Sorry for my delay in the entering this meeting. As Pedro said before, we are working a lot with data sets and we are labeling this image. The problem is, in some agricultural contexts, we can use this data set and label it and make it public. But there are other kind of data that we cannot fully make it available. But we can contribute for sure. And we have an open repository with ROS-A that is annotated, that you can use to test as a ground truth to evaluate your solution. If you want to test your algorithm detecting, for instance, trunks in the vineyards, we have already, I think, more than 1 hour and a half of stereo cameras capturing image in vineyards, and these all images are labeled just with trunks, not so much visual features, but this can be our first contribution. But as Pedro said before, probably is not just enough having the bounding box selecting the trunks, and probably we will need to go more deeper and classify at the level of pixels. But at that level, I don't know, but because it will be very time consuming. And at this moment, we don't have a workforce working on that. But as a starting point, I strongly agree. Sharing data sets around ROS. So, and we have these data sets, and we can give this first small contribution for the community.
That's already really nice. I think the first step was even meant just as a background research. So what is available, what open data sets are available, how are they annotated? Of course, it's already amazing if someone can throw something in from other projects. But as the suggestion was, and I strongly agree with it, is just to find this starting point where maybe I and Pedro and so on do some little background research to create this initial seed to start the group work on, or the focus on that first point, on the dataset point. And then, of course, we can contribute certain works that we've already done or that we will do maybe this spring and this summer. I think there's a lot of work that will be done this year as well from a lot of institutes. But yeah, I like the idea, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's...
Please go.
May I also add something? It's Nikos from Agricultural University of Athens. We are also working on some similar ideas because we have, I would say, tons of data of the field on the field level, and students and our colleagues are working on the annotation part. So we have identified the JSON format as a rather flexible format to start building our annotations. And we're also exploring some ways to release these data sets into public, also with some first pre-trained neural networks, and also release the trained weights of these networks to provide them in the community in order to be able to reproduce and redeployed on other fields and applications, let's say. So I'm quite interested also to participate in this working group.
Okay. Nikos.
Nikos, sorry, you have mentioned one thing that is very important because at our laboratory we are mainly using transfer learning, and we are starting with the general network that was previously trained.
Yeah.
And you have that is amazing. And that is public, or is just how you have started that network? You have a specific data set for a specific crop, or
data sets are there, so we are collecting more data, but you know the hassle and the pain of annotating on a pixel level, so it takes too much time. We have some people working on it, and we want to accelerate this procedure. So another important aspect is the transfer learning aspect of using either ImageNet or Coco weights, which is somehow irrelevant when we want to go beyond the visible spectrum. So what happens if you want to classify images using multispectral cameras? You actually cannot use ImageNet because...
Yeah, right, yeah.
So the idea, and I think the way forward is to create an agriculture ImageNet, and this is a good topic to consider at the future.
This is sorry. In the interest of time, I find this a very interesting discussion, but this is exactly something that the working group that we just sort of proposed could work on, at least initially. And then I would suggest that the results of this initial discussion are presented in a later community meeting, because otherwise we run out of time. And I just wanted to draw some attention to a comment that Matt wrote in the chat, where he mentions that on the ROS Agriculture Wiki page on the ROS Wiki, there are already a few public data sets linked. So those could definitely be taken into this list that the working group could be working on. As Kevin said, at least in my mind, the initial work would be something like just making an inventory of what's out there, in what formats, how it's being used, whether it's publicly available, etc. and then we can start looking into other things, just as what Nikos, for instance, mentioned later or earlier. Would that be something that would be agreeable to everyone?
Can I propose to follow what you just said as the main, the first action, and the second action before trying to do anything else, to create a guideline on how to produce the annotations in such a generic way before we move to annotation itself. So the first one is to see what's happening, a literature review, and see how the data is being labeled for different neural networks. And the second one, then to create a guide that will be a reference guide, so that everyone then can try to migrate what they already have into that format.
Sure.
All right.
But we are, so the thing is, there's only a month between each community meeting. So I would definitely focus on the first goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. The second goal is definitely, obviously, a follow-up. But I can, since we all have day jobs in a way, I can definitely see a month not being sufficient to also already come up with proposals. And
absolutely.
I would suggest, but this is just my suggestion, and obviously I'm not in a working group, to focus on the first goal first. So see what's out there, how it's used, if it's available, and then maybe also decide on whether to list this already either on the ROS Agriculture Wiki or in some other place.
Exactly, and I completely agree on that one as well. I would also start with a small step, as you said. Maybe we could do something like, first of all, we can do the background check in general, what is openly available. That's something that the working group itself, so me and Pedro, could start with. And as well, we could collect maybe the current works that are being done at the different institutes that are represented right now in the ROS agriculture community. Just with maybe some bullets, what data sets, what crops are focused, maybe some other additional information that is necessary for a first step. That we could also afterwards maybe share to everyone else, so that everyone has an overview, because we already had some discussions now between Pedro and between Nikos, for example, about certain topics like that, and just to create a common understanding who's working on what framework is this, as you said, as a first step, and then we could follow up with a suggestion of Pedro, for example. But I think that makes a lot of sense for the first maybe phase or 4 weeks.
Okay, so we can write you down for presentation of about 10-15 minutes for next month.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. I think we need to move on to the next topic, unless there are any other people who want to comment on this particular topic right now. If you could speak up.
Okay. So I think that is the time to move on to the next session. It's a really, so Kevin and Pedro and Nikos, do you agree to work on this, like the first initiative? Maybe you can prepare a presentation for the next meeting.
I do. Pedro here.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to all the others, just share with us, with Pedro, me, and Nikos, maybe your bullets or some bullets with what you're working on currently in the sense of those data sets, and maybe also as a second point already, if you're already doing it, what you're working on in navigation, multi-vehicle navigation. We could already, with a few bullets, maybe set that up. And that's, I think, already enough together with the background research, and then either Pedro or me can present it in the next meeting. Exactly.
Yeah, perfect. So I think we can use Slack for this, for the communication. Maybe we can create like the channel called data set.
I'm creating one just now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we only have 8 minutes left, so let's move on to the next one. That is the last one, I would say. So at the previous meeting, there were like a couple of subjects brought up, which is the year, like the possible European events. So like, I forgot who brought these questions on Slack. Like, should we have a workshops for IROS or ICRA? Like, I don't really know if we should, but do you have any opinions for it? Does anyone have any opinion?
Yeah, that's Shoaib from Nibio. I actually asked the question on Slack if there will be like any workshops for IROS or ICRA. Because there have been one last year, I guess, or 2 years ago in IROS, and it's really interesting actually to go there in person and meet the other people who are working on some agricultural robotics and the people who are in the field. Because if you just like keep it like sparse, it means like you get a paper here and a paper there on like agriculture, it won't be possible to have an overview on who's working on what, and to have like it's a good opportunity to have more network building than just like to have like small groups. So that's why like I was asking if there would be like some kind of event, but yeah, so that's the idea, is mostly to bring us more close together, and it's like a way to meet in person, and yeah, to maybe can have like kind of side meetings inside like beside these workshops or something, where we can discuss yeah, several topics. And actually just like commenting on the last point, I'm sorry, because it was like so focused on the annotation part, and then like just one sentence slipped in about the navigation. So I'm interested to take part of the multi-vehicle navigation as well. So yeah, I'll be sharing my what we are doing here in the center in terms of multi-vehicle navigation as well. So yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. So maybe Shrub, like, could you maybe give a presentation on the multi-navigation for the next meeting, so that we can have another share goal for the ROS community, I mean, agriculture community? That would be
Yeah,
great.
sure. Sure.
Okay, so the next one is like also the next one is like Martin previously also brought up a question is, should we have a consortium? So this is the like a lingering question for this community. Personally, I again do not know if we should have consortium. Maybe Gijs, you can make a comment on this, because you have lots of experience on ROS industry.
Well, so I guess in the ROS Industrial community, so there's two sides to ROS Industrial. One side is the open source side, which is what people tend to know from ROS Discourse, ROS Answers, our GitHub repositories. The other side is the side that's managed by the three consortia, and we have an Asian one, a European one, and an Americas one. The benefits that those consortia give us are on the side of organizing events, because it's clear who's organizing an event. It's clear that it's not one particular partner in such a consortium, but it's the consortium itself. And there are membership fees, so they tend to pay for a small percentage towards some of the costs that are involved in managing such a consortium and organizing these events. The drawbacks obviously are that it's overhead. You need people who manage these sort of consortia. You need to have membership. Well, I believe you need to have some sort of membership fee, because otherwise you don't have any funds, which is very difficult to do anything basically without any money, unfortunately. Otherwise you're dependent on volunteers. And there's a legal side to it, which is also something that needs to be managed. So it could be an advantage for ROS agriculture, mostly Europe, I would say, at this point, maybe also the Americas. But it is a different kind of structure. So I think this is definitely something the community needs to figure out for itself, and it's not something that could be either imposed or decided by anyone else.
Yeah, so does anyone have any opinion on the consortium?
Yeah, try again. I think this will be a natural thing that comes after, when we are a bit forward with what we are doing together, because at this stage, we just began to discover each other and what we are doing, and the previous idea of having like a small task between Pedro, Kevin, and I don't remember who else, to set up this, at least like to have an overview of the data annotation subject. I think this is the first direction towards having a common interests, and to having a consortium will be a natural thing if we are tightened together, or if we are more collaborating together. But I don't think that we are at this stage able to do anything of this big. I don't know. That's just a point of view.
I
Yes,
agree with
sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with Shuab. So yeah, Kevin, you can go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's nonetheless important to already think about possible structures of such a community or the community building. Maybe if Christoph is available next time, we could already also present a little bit about how the ROS Industrial Consortium is set up, because as Fraunhofer IPA, we were head of ROS Industrial Europe for quite a long time. I guess Christoph has quite a good insight in that. Just to give an idea how it might look like for ROS Agriculture as well. I completely agree that we are maybe a step before the whole community building, but nonetheless, I mean, we can already discuss it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I totally
sure,
agree.
sure. This discussion is always welcome and open. So, yeah.
I will definitely talk to Christoph, who's not here for the next few days, but most likely for the next ROS Agriculture meeting. If he can already maybe present a little bit about ROS Industrial, that we get a better overview there. But sure, I have to discuss it with him first, and maybe as a 5-minute presentation or something, we could bring that in.
Yeah, sure. Also, Christoph mentioned this to me, so we will have like a meeting. I will have a meeting with him about this issue later on.
Okay.
So
Perfect. Yeah.
So I think we are running out of time. So maybe just last one about the ROS discourse.
Can I ask you just
yes.
to advertise something? So we, Matt has created a new group called SIG, Special Interest Group _ datasets. So please, everyone that is interested on the datasets, please join the group, because our goal is to only have people that are interested to discuss about datasets on the Slack group. Okay.
On Slack, right?
Yes, Slack.
Okay, perfect.
ROS-A.
Thank you. So the last, just have the last point. Gijs, you already like sort of communicate with the ROS Discord person about the ROS agriculture. Like, should we open the discourse?
Yeah, so a quick status update. I've been in contact with Tali Food from OSRF, and he is open to creating a ROS agriculture category on ROS Discourse, as we discussed in the last community meeting. But I can start the discussion around this, but I need all of you to support me in this by registering for an account on ROS Discourse, and then publicly stating your support, which doesn't go much further than, yes, I think this is a good idea, or yes, I would definitely participate in discussions in this new category. That's basically the way we prove that there's a critical mass of people and community that would be using this new category. And we proved that to the maintainer / administrator of Discourse. And that's currently sort of the plan of attack. So I will post today on the Discourse in the site feedback category about creating a ROS agriculture category, which will be similar to the categories for outerwear, for instance, and ROS industrial. And then I would like all of you to basically state your support and show that we have a critical mass. There is a ROS agriculture community, and that also goes for all your American participants, Matt, and all the participants on the American side, I would say. So not just those in Europe, because that's basically the way to get this category started. And Slack is obviously still a good channel to discuss things. I would suggest that for other types of topics, so things that are supposed to stay around for longer, things that are a bit more, I would say, strategic, and for which you want to reach a wider audience, also announcements, that would definitely be where ROS Discourse would be the proper venue. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you guys. So can you share like the link so that everyone can
Yes,
support?
I will.
to stand in this?
The discourse instance for ROS is at discourse.ros.org.
I can share.
We will still send it around on Slack, but at
Okay.
least now you know discourse.ros.org. And if you already have a GitHub account or a Google one, there are several integrations, so you don't need to register for a new account necessarily.
So I think that's the end of the meeting, because in fact it's already 11:04. So thank you everyone for attending. So I will send the poll of the day for the next week, next meeting. So maybe around in the beginning of March, I will send the doodle poll again. So thank you everyone.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And
Thank
have
you.
a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.